Please could you briefly introduce yourself, just talk a little bit about your past experiences in regulatory affairs of cell and gene therapies, and also talk a little bit about your current work at AstraZeneca.
Sounds great. Thank you for the question. So I worked in FDA for 13 years. First, for 10 years at OTAT at that time for the Office for Cell Gene Therapy. I worked there for a clinical reviewer and review all the trials for cell gene therapy, but non-oncological, meaning anything, oncological CAR Ts belong to other big group. And we are working on the general internal medicine, anything beyond that. And then typical example is I worked as a primary reviewer, clinical reviewer for the first gene therapy, that is the Lux Turner for a rare disease of blindness. So that one was submitted and then approved by FDA 2017 on AAV virus. Besides that, for the cell therapy, work on the somatic cell therapy, for example, cord blood, for transplantation, and then other things, for example, fibroblasts for wrinkle treatment. So variety of cell therapy as well. So that's basically my past experience, and also have 3 years working with CDER for small molecule. The main indication is the NASH, or nowadays we call it MESH. So working on those two big fields, and then move on because I'm also interested in the industry, see how things originated, right? So I worked briefly in a biotech company for oncological products for a year as their head of regulatory. But then later on, I thought, I want to see trials because they are very initial small company. They don't have any trials. So I moved on to AstraZeneca. Currently, I'm the regulatory affairs director at the CVRM, cardiovascular, metabolic, renal disease. So working as a spectrum of disease. So I think that's my short answer for 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then my next question is, what would you say are some of the biggest regulatory challenges in cell and gene therapy at the moment?
Yeah, apparently, this is definitely a rising field. And of course, there's a lot of things need to be established, iron out. And I think now compared to 20 years ago is huge improvement. So maybe a cell therapy, or no, maybe both together. I think we had a recent meeting to discuss what's the bottleneck, right? So a lot of people agree. There are a variety of them. The regulatory wise, one is basically the global health authority convergence. Of course, different authority have different opinions. This is the diversity. This is great to contribute all those development. But sometimes different opinion or some opposite opinion may become a bottleneck. People have to resolve differences. Sometimes may be unresolvable. I think the FDA also tried to reach out to EU to see how things, work together for one indication. So I think that's considered one of the bigger one for regulation. And then from my opinion, there are some others. For example, this is very new field. There are a lot of times there's no rules formed. So it's basically you form the rules while going, regarding safety and efficacy. So I think people need to have expertise in this field and have a learning attitude because things changing, and also attitude of a little risky sometimes, because there's no answer. You have to go by your current situation and adapt by either industry and also as a regulatory adapting along the way. So I think that's the 2 points I want to point out.
Thank you. My next question is looking at kind of how regulation has progressed in cell and gene therapy kind of in the past, and also how you potentially see regulation changing in the future for cell and gene therapies.
That's a very good question because there's a tremendous change. I think because I work with FDA, so I kind of provide some changes on the FDA part because there's a legislation recently recognized cell gene therapy. There's a huge potential to impact people's lives, especially rare disease currently. But there's always a lack of resources as compared to CDER. CBER have a minimum because at the time it's very rising field. But nowadays, from the regulatory point of view, we have the Office of Therapeutic Products Office. That's 5 times bigger than before. There's a lot of interactions between the FDA and the industry from different fields, CMC, clinical, as well as the preclinical. So there's a transparency going on. And then also, I think from an industry side, I think we need to put more impact and then, comments on the guidance. There's a lot of guidance come out. So we need to read, understand, and then also give feedback. So that's also need to both sides to push the field. So I think that's the big change in the regulatory in terms of acceptance of the rapid growth and then more guidance is coming in. So I think the future change will be the pilots going on in FDA to see if it's interaction with FDA live to discuss issues, could be a roadblock live or through email. There are a lot of renovation now going on. And also there's a more on the manufacturer side. And that's also recognized as one of the bottleneck because without the manufacturer, you cannot scale up the trials. Phase 1 is easier. You don't use a lot of product, but phase 2, phase 3 apparently need a lot. So that will be a field need to have a, jump start. I think nowadays the sponsor can reference the previous protocols. So I would say the future will be dramatic changed with that, the streamline of the manufacturer. And I think that's pretty much. I think of one point, but I'll add on later.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. And then for my final question, I just wanted to ask how platforms such as the Cell and Gene Therapy Regulatory Affairs Summit can help to advance this community and advance networking within this community. So I think I'm very impressed by a small scale. So people is not like go to the big meetings, don't know, just like sitting there taking notes. So not only in your platform, you have presentation platform, but also there are a lot of interactions going on, right? For example, there are frequent breaks in the middle break, people see each other, round table. Actually, I would say besides the presentation, also maybe leave half of time kind of have a Q&A. So that's actually most needed for this small meeting if we can. Of course, I don't know what's the scale, how many people. So I think both are needed. And also examples, I think there are a lot of people from different companies. Of course, there's a lot of trade secrets people cannot give, but I see people give examples approved. Everything is published. A lot of times it's with transparency, FDA or EMA have published the data, but people have no time to dug in. So I think that's area we need to present, not only the theory, because that's hard to understand, but give some examples for each of the presentation that will help to understand. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. Some really amazing